The lights didn't just go out in that Bronx studio, they exposed something far darker. One moment Jim Jones believed he was building his media empire, recording podcasts, hosting guests, moving like a Harlem boss. The next moment he was outside his own door, locked out, kicking wood and steel while cameras rolled. And those cameras were no longer neutral. They belonged to the man who had just flipped the board. This was not a diss track, not a rap beef. This was a calculated corporate ambush. While everyone else was arguing online, 50 Cent was allegedly signing paperwork. While rivals were posting captions, he was acquiring deeds. Then came the post that shook the culture. Surveillance footage, a shut-off studio, a cold caption that echoed louder than any freestyle. I own this. In a world where rappers fight for streams and clout, 50 changed the battlefield to property rights and unpaid rent. Suddenly, this wasn't about bars. It was about who controls the building, the brand, and the future. And when the landlord becomes your enemy, every locked door feels like a public execution. What made this situation explosive was not just the footage of Jim Jones outside that locked studio door. It was the timing and the strategy behind it. For years, the tension between 50 Cent and Jim Jones had simmered in interviews, slick comments, and indirect shots. But this time the battlefield shifted from music to money. Instead of responding with a diss record, 50 allegedly moved in silence, studying paperwork, lease agreements, and ownership structures connected to the Bronx property where Jim was operating his podcast and creative space. While Jim was building content and projecting stability, 50 was reportedly negotiating behind the scenes with the original landlord, positioning himself not as a rival artist but as a potential owner. When the announcement finally surfaced through social media, it did not arrive as a press release or a legal statement. It arrived as surveillance footage. The grainy clip showed Jim frustrated, trying to force entry into a studio he believed was still his base of operations. The symbolism was brutal. In hip-hop culture, space equals power. The studio is more than a room with microphones. It is headquarters, brand identity, proof of motion. By posting that video, 50 did more than embarrass Jim. He reframed the narrative. He suggested unpaid obligations, missing paperwork, and a transfer of control that placed him at the top of the food chain. The caption culture amplified the impact. Instead of lengthy explanations, short, icy lines hinted at full ownership and hinted that any damage to the property would now come with financial consequences. Fans immediately split into two camps. One side called it genius, a masterclass in business warfare where ownership outranks ego. The other side questioned whether it was humiliation disguised as strategy. Meanwhile, the Monday deadline narrative intensified everything. The idea that there was a clock ticking added urgency and fear. Equipment, archives, unreleased footage. All of it suddenly felt vulnerable. In modern media ecosystems, content is currency, and whoever controls the hard drives controls the leverage. That is what made this move feel different from traditional rap feuds. This was not about who had better bars or louder supporters. It was about who held the keys. The more 50 leaned into the landlord persona, the more the story evolved into a cautionary tale about infrastructure. Artists often present themselves as bosses, but true power lies in ownership documents, not Instagram captions. By centering the conflict around property rights, 50 shifted the focus from personality to paperwork, and in doing so, he forced the entire industry to watch a lesson unfold in real time. As the pressure built, the situation stopped looking like a simple lockout and started resembling a calculated squeeze. The conversation online moved from jokes to serious questions about debt, leases, and legal exposure. If 50 Cent truly stepped into the role of property owner, that would mean Jim Jones was no longer just dealing with a rival. He was dealing with a creditor. That shift changes everything. In business disputes, the person who controls the property controls the pace of the conflict. Each post from 50 reinforced that power imbalance. Instead of arguing emotionally, he leaned into documentation, hints of overdue payments, and the idea that any remaining assets inside the studio could fall under his authority. That suggestion alone created massive psychological pressure. Imagine trying to operate creatively while knowing the building itself might not legally be yours anymore. Every microphone, every camera, every hard drive suddenly feels temporary. The humiliation element deepened when the footage of Jim kicking the door circulated repeatedly. It became a meme, a symbol of being locked out of your own kingdom. In hip-hop culture, perception is everything, and perception shifted fast. 50 positioned himself as the strategist who plays chess while others play checkers. Jim, fairly or unfairly, was painted as a boss who did not secure his foundation. The Monday deadline became a storyline of its own, almost like a countdown to a public verdict. Fans refreshed their feeds, waiting to see if there would be lawsuits, asset seizures, or another cold announcement. What started as tension between two artists had evolved into a lesson about leverage, control, and the price of not owning the ground you stand on. By the time the dust began to settle, the real damage was no longer about a single studio space. It was about reputation. In an industry where image fuels opportunity, being publicly locked out can echo louder than any diss track. 50 Cent did not just challenge Jim Jones lyrically, he challenged the structure behind his brand by framing the conflict around ownership, paperwork, and financial responsibility. He shifted the culture's focus toward infrastructure instead of intimidation. The message was simple but heavy. If you do not control your environment, someone else eventually will, even if Jim relocates, rebuilds, and continues creating content. The footage and the narrative have already carved a permanent chapter into the story. Meanwhile, 50 reinforced his identity as more than a rapper. He positioned himself as a businessman willing to weaponize strategy instead of emotion. Whether people view it as ruthless or brilliant, the impact is undeniable. This moment turned a personal feud into a public seminar on leverage. In modern hip-hop, dominance is no longer proven only in the booth. It is proven in contracts, keys, and who truly owns the building when the lights go out. So now the real question is bigger than just 50 Cent and Jim Jones. Was this the ultimate power move? Or did it cross a line that should never be crossed in hip-hop? When competition turns into ownership warfare, is it still a feud or is it a takeover? If the cameras, the locks, and the paperwork all favor 50 Cent, does that automatically make him the winner? Or does legacy still matter more than leverage? And most importantly, can Jim Jones truly recover from a moment that the entire internet has already turned into a symbol? I want you to tell me exactly where you stand. Is this ruthless genius or unnecessary humiliation? Drop your thoughts in the comments right now, and let the debate begin. If you want more deep breakdowns like this, make sure you subscribe to the Hype Spill and turn on notifications so you never miss the next power move exposed.